Yo, so today we're going to be talking about one of Oda's biggest fumbles in the motherfucking Straw Hat crew, at least in my opinion. And I must admit, post-time skip at least, Oda has been kind of a fumble artist with the Straw Hat squad, at least in terms of, character development, and they've all been pretty stagnant for a while. All that's really changed is the appearances for most characters, and, well, the guy in this video had a pretty drastic change that most people didn't like, almost to the point where he's non-recognizable from what he was pre-time skip. We're talking about Franky, alright? The least popular Straw Hat according to the most recent popularity polls, and I honestly think he's just been dealt a very dirty hand by Oda. Worse than anybody, really, and yes, even Bimbo, Soulless Chopper. To me, at least, Franky has almost faded into the background, or faded into obscurity, big word there, and he doesn't really have his, his quirky thing anymore, and that's pretty depressing. So we meet Franky as almost a villain kind of character back in Water 7, one of the best arcs in fucking One Piece, which, for a future Straw Hat, is a pretty unique-ass introduction. Well, I guess Robin was kind of a villain too, but let's just ignore that for now. Franky had a very unique appearance, rocking his blue Ace Ventura-ass haircut with his big-ass forearms with little, the fucking star on it. If Franky was in a crowd of people, he's one of, if not the first person you gravitate to. Like, if you see a picture of all the Straw Hats together, the first people you're gonna notice are Franky and probably, like, Brooke, because they're fucking huge and they look ridiculous. So Franky was just wrecking havoc with his little Franky family all over Water 7. It was a delight to watch. The Franky family, to me, seemed like a bunch of crackheads running around living together. I loved it quite a bit, and I love their crack house, too. I really like that moment where Luffy, Zoro, Sanji save Usopp or whatever outside of the crack house and fucking beat everybody's ass in there. I love that moment. Franky was just kind of the neighborhood nuisance in Water 7, and he ended up stealing all of Straw Hat's money. I believe it was like 200 million, and he blew it all on wood, which would later be used on the Sunny. But where Franky really begins to shine is in his backstory, which is definitely on the better end when it comes to the crew's backstories. And, I made a video on it a fucking couple weeks ago. They got some good-ass backstories. We learned that Franky has closer ties to Roger than anybody in the crew. He met fucking Odin, and I guess he was at least around Roger at least once. Franky's parents were pirates and they abandoned his ass, so Franky kind of despised pirates for a while, and I mean, understandably so. That's why he didn't really fuck with Roger. But the biggest highlight of Franky's backstory was our boy Tom. He was just a fucking god. He was a fishman, and at that point, the only fishmen we really knew of were Arlong and his goons. So I guess Tom was the first friendly fishman we had ever seen at that point. Tom built Roger's ship, which goes pretty hard, but unfortunately, that shit came back to bite him in the ass. They came back to capture Tom's ass and haul him back to Enies Lobby in the sea train that Franky, Tom, and Iceberg built. So the very thing that they created aided in Tom being fucking killed. Pretty deep shit. It's pretty sad. And Franky tried to stop the sea train from fucking moving, and he didn't have any bodily modifications at this point, and he fucking stopped it for a solid couple seconds, and then his body got all fucked up from that, and that's how he became a cyborg. Franky also played a pretty solid role in Enies Lobby, being the motherfucker who destroyed the Pluton blueprints right in front of Spandam. But please tell me, after Enies Lobby, what memorable moment does Franky have all to himself? Maybe the Senior Pink shit, but that just has more to do with Senior Pink being a fucking stone cold gangster, or my bad, hard boiled. But what really symbolized the fall off of Franky for me, and pretty much everyone who has watched One Piece up to this point, is his post-time skip design. He just turns into a giant fucking robot with big ass shoulders. He just looks like a goddamn toy. And on top of that, he shaved his signature crazy ass hair, which I mean, he can like press his nose and it grows, but you get what I mean. His signature haircut is gone. So like, what the fuck? And I get the gag with him is that he's constantly innovating and evolving and strays further and further away from being a human. Like literally his most recent bounty poster, his picture is of the fucking Sunny. But with Chopper, another guy who in my opinion downgraded in his post-time skip appearance, just ended up getting more cute and soulless. But whatever, let me stop shitting on Franky for a minute. Franky, in my opinion, is an underrated ass fighter, and his fighting style goes pretty fucking hard, alright? There isn't really anybody in the One Piece world who fights like Franky. Whenever Franky hits us with a radical beam, you can't help but get fucking hyped. What other character in One Piece fights in a big ass mech made out of a tank in a motorcycle. It goes hard, all right? I've said that like 16 times this video, but there's no other word to describe it. It goes hard. But unfortunately, since Franky is like the 5th strongest fighter in the crew, he ends up fighting pretty shitty characters that nobody really gives a fuck about, excluding a couple. For example, in Wano, he fights that big-ass Triceratops dude, while Jinbei gets to fight Who's Who, who's pretty fucking cool. I mean, he played a role in transporting the Gum Gum fruit back in the day, so there's lore coming from him, and he's kind of like Lucci. You know, I like Who's Who. Sanji gets Queen, which would actually make quite a bit of sense as a fight for Franky, since they both use science-related shit, and Zoro gets King, Luffy gets Kaido. Franky always ends up getting just mid-opponents. Franky is a generally unappreciated character, and I don't think we'll ever see any kind of saving grace for him. He's just kind of gonna be this way forever. I mean, he's a grown-ass man. What do you expect? He's not gonna change that much. He's like fucking 45 years old. His final goal is pretty subjective, creating the best ship ever, so he'll always be adding onto the Sunny, and I won't be shocked if he's one of the last Straw Hats to achieve their dream. It'll be interesting to see what Franky deems is the perfect ship, or if the perfect ship is just fucking Franky becoming the ship, which I guess you could say was, you know, foreshadowed in the bounty poster a little bit. Just saying, if that happens, come back to me and praise me. But yeah, I'm just showing a little bit of sympathy for the ever-shrinking Franky family. I think he deserves some more love, and I mean, he is a very unique character and plays a very necessary role in the crew, being the shipwright and fixing shit and always building shit, giving everybody little gadgets. I guess Usopp does that too. But Franky's cool, alright? I'm just very upset with how the community has treated him and how Usopp has how Oda has treated him. I mean, same fucking thing. I'm just asking Oda, please, I'm on my knees right now, just give me one good Franky moment for the rest of the story. I know One Piece is in his final saga. Just give Franky something good. Have him fight like an admiral for a few seconds. Something like that. I think he can hang with an admiral, end of the story, for a few minutes. At least I'd hope. But yeah, no, that's about it. Fuck you.